Hello and welcome back to our discussion on the muscular system. Today we're going to talk about types of muscles and movement specifics. So we're going to get more into how we move. So at the end of this lesson, my goal is for you to be able to distinguish between the three types of muscles. So skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle. You'll be able to identify them based on their descriptions and appearances. We're going to look at origin and insertion points and apply that to how muscles function. And we're going to explain what we mean by prime movers, synergists, and antagonists, and how those relate to movement of our body. So here we go. Types of muscles. So first we have, in this unit, we're going to focus on this thing called skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is consciously controlled, meaning you have to consciously think, I want to do this, and then you do it. We also have smooth muscle, which is not consciously controlled, or it's unconsciously controlled. So we have involuntary control of smooth muscle, which is associated with your internal organs and organ systems. So things like your stomach, your esophagus, your liver, your lungs, your heart, all of those function, I guess not your lungs, your diaphragm, all those function without you really thinking, that they just work regardless of whether you want them to or not. Smooth muscle has a different shape than skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle is elongated, cylindrical, and has many nuclei in each fiber, which we kind of talked about a little bit in the previous section. But so here's kind of a sketch of a skeletal muscle. That it's long, cylindrical. These lines are called striations, so it has striations. Smooth muscle is shorter, has a fat center with tapered ends. It's kind of almost oblong shaped, and then it has a single nucleus. So down here at the bottom, you have your thicker middle section, your tapered ends on both sides, and a single nucleus. This table might not be bad to copy down into your notes. That gives you a comparison. So control is voluntary for skeletal, it's involuntary for smooth. Skeletal muscle has striations, smooth muscle does not. As far as number of nuclei, your skeletal muscle is multinucleated, your smooth muscle is a single nucleus. And then because skeletal is long and cylindrical, it's not branching. And then your smooth muscle is tapered. We're going to talk cardiac here soon. This is an example of skeletal muscle. So you see your skeletal muscle. Here's the striations. You see those lines. You see the multiple nuclei. And this is 100 times zoom. So 100 times bigger than what you would see if you were looking at it with the naked eye. But there you can see what skeletal muscle looks like. To compare that, here is smooth muscle. So you notice this is kind of a drawing of what's over here. But notice you have a couple nuclei, but these are tapered. It's hard to see in this picture, I know that. But these are tapered here on all the sides. And it's easier to look at the sketch and get all that. But that is a smooth muscle cell, and smooth muscle there. When we talk about smooth muscle, we have this thing called visceral smooth muscle, just visceral referring to organs. And so all of your smooth muscle surrounding organs is subconsciously controlled. We don't think about it. And an entire sheet of muscle is controlled by a single nerve. So an impulse is passed through all the cells, and so this nerve fires and the whole muscle sheet contracts. The contractions are rhythmic and wave-like, which we'll talk about next semester when we talk the digestive system. It is this term called peristalsis. So peristalsis is your wave-like contraction that helps food pass through the body. So the rhythmic contraction of waves allows things to pass through, and that's where it's moved in the same direction. Your digestive tract, your reproductive system, your urinary system all utilize peristalsis to move materials through your body. Your visceral smooth muscle has neurotransmitters. It utilizes acetylcholine. It also uses norepinephrine. So each will stimulate some smooth muscles and excite others. This is why when you are exercising and you're stressed, your digestive system slows down. That's the norepinephrine part. But then when it goes to rest, it speeds up again. And your heart works the opposite. That when you're resting, your heart rate drops. When you're exercising, your heart rate goes up. Hormones affect smooth muscle contraction along with your neurotransmitters. So oxytocin stimulates your uterus during childbirth to contract and push the child out, which is kind of nice if you're in labor and want it to be out. Stretching can also induce contractions and signals from your urinary bladder and your intestines as well. So we have skeletal, we have smooth, we also have cardiac. Cardiac muscle is only found in the heart, hence the cardiac. Contains components of both smooth and skeletal. The ends of cardiac muscle cells connect and form cross bands called intercalated discs, which we'll look at here shortly. But this is cardiac muscle. Notice it's got the striations. It's cylindrical, similar to skeletal. It has a single. It's got a single nucleus per cell. These are connected. It's branched, unlike your skeletal muscle, but then they're connected with intercalated disc, which you can see here. So here's a cell, it's got an intercalated disc connecting it to the next cell. And here is an actual diagram of one. So you see these thick lines here are your intercalated discs here in the middle. So all of those are intercalated discs. You see your nuclei all over the place and so on and so forth. When we're talking skeletal muscles, so in this unit, we're going to talk about what's called the origin point and the insertion point. Your origin is something that you cannot move. So the immovable attachment of a muscle tends to be the more proximal of the two locations. Your insertion point is the movable end of a muscle or the more distal portion. For example, your biceps brachii, bi refers to two, has two origins. That's the biceps. So it originates at the glenoid fossa along with the coracoid process. So glenoid fossa and coracoid process are both found in the scapula. It inserts on the radial tuberosity, just distal to the head of the radius. And so when it contracts, it pulls that closer to these two muscles, or these two origin points. To do this, with movement, we have three types of muscles. We have prime movers, we have synergists, and antagonists. The prime mover is a large muscle, mostly responsible for the movement. So in the case of a bicep curl, you're working your biceps brachii. Your synergists are muscles that contract to help the prime mover. Your core muscles are almost always contracted and supporting and a synergist for a movement. But in the case of a bicep curl, you have your biceps brachii, you have your coracobrachialis, you have your brachioradialis, are all working together. But the prime mover is going to be the biceps brachii, your coracobrachialis and your brachioradialis are going to be your synergists. And then your antagonist is doing the opposite. It's resisting the motion. So in the case of a curl, you're going to have your antagonist be your tricep muscle. So they all work to move and stabilize the joints. The prime movers are responsible for the movements. The synergists and antagonists support the joints. You need all three. It's impossible not to contract the biceps while bench pressing, but it's also not a bicep lift. In this case, your biceps is going to be the antagonist. Your tricep is the muscle you're actually working. So all of them come in pairs. Here are your review questions for this unit or this section. So what are the three types of muscle cells and how are they different? Which types do we have voluntary control over? Which are involuntary? What is the origin point and insertion point for skeletal muscle? And why are prime movers, synergists, and antagonists all necessary for mobility? Thank you for your time and attention today, and I will see you next time.